Hi everybody. If you've seen my previous videos about my 8-year saga with Hodgkin's lymphoma before I got a definitive diagnosis, and about my situation with breast cancer following my chemo. And now I'd like to tell you about this crazy year we call 2020, the year of the SARS-CoV-2 virus and COVID-19 pandemic. And this year has been no exception in its ups and downs for me. I've been in grad school finishing up my Master's of Education. And in January, I seemed to get ill, and I started to socially distance in my classes because I learned to do that when my father had a low immune system, to make sure that there was no way that I could spread any illness to other people by keeping my distance from my father physically and making sure that I had very good hand hygiene and other things like that. Anyhow, I also started to wake up with headache, a high temperature, and shaky in the morning in this month. And it seemed to finally get better, which is typical for illnesses for me. I often will get sick with minor things and then get better. In March, I had a weird allergic reaction while I was just sitting there one night right after I'd taken my medication. And my throat kind of swelled up, and my lips swelled up. And I called my clinic, my oncologist clinic, because I thought maybe it was the medication I had just taken, because nothing else was different. Well, they said that's probably not what happened, because I've been taking this medication for so long, and if something was going to show up, it would have shown up a long time before. So, who knows? Well, I got past that. Got past the whole illness of January. And then in March, I got a little bit of a fever, and then a belly rash, and then burning tongue like I had before in that winter of 2000, 2007, 2006-07, when I got the burning tongue and a swollen throat with some unknown virus. And, it could have been just about anything this March that I had. A low fever, headache, burning tongue, a rash on my belly, and then sore throat. And then it seemed to get better, but I was concerned because my mother and my grandmother had hypothyroidism. And so I thought, well, maybe with that throat thing, I was developing the thyroid thing. So I got that tested negative. So, maybe it was like a really mild flu or cold or parainfluenza or something. I get the flu shot every year, so I've never noticed symptoms before, but maybe something like that or something else. And it's not unusual for me to have strange temperatures, either a little high or a little low. Post chemo, that's completely normal. And with my thyroid being checked and coming back normal, I thought, oh, no worries. Well, then April showed up, and at the time I was working on my master's project for school and doing the side hustle of working at a craft store, which was extremely busy for the pandemic. And I was trying out different kinds of masks to see, what was more comfortable and something I could wear without trying to adjust during the day, or something that would cause soreness behind the ears or other issues that some people have had. And on that day, towards the end of my shift, I started to get super dizzy with my mask on. And at one point, I got one of those dizzy spells and my vision went kind of black. and then it came back. And when I got home, I had this feeling like I did at work, like I wasn't breathing properly. So I was doing this deep breathing, and it felt like I was holding my breath, which I don't know. Maybe I was hyperventilating, but I don't remember doing that at work. And it took all that night and then a little bit of the next morning until I started to feel normal again. But I did. And I just thought, man, I didn't know it would be hard like that to wear a mask. Maybe it was the style that I was wearing. I wasn't sure. But that weird incident with that mask, it never happened again after that. I've been fine wearing masks at work after that. Well, it's allergy season for me in April, so I seem to start to get a little bit of something in the back of my throat, which every once in a while I'd clear my mouth at work, and my back started to itch a little bit, which is normal for allergies. So I started my allergy medication and tried not to get too scared because, man, tell you, paranoia was abounding, and I had people I knew breaking down and crying and having panic attacks at work and at home, and just very worried about the future. And I've been through a lot of rough times before, so I was just trying to keep that fear at bay and just keep going with life as best I could. And I thought about quitting my job because I knew if I kept that job, eventually I was going to be exposed at work. There was really no way around it, and I thought, well, maybe I should quit. And then I thought, but we don't know when there's going to be treatments, and we don't know how good those treatments are, and the future is so uncertain. And right now I have a job, and even if it's not a great job, and even though I'm planning on graduating, who knows with everything that's going on if I'm going to be able to get my dream job after this. Well, on the week of the 21st of April, I started to get tired in the evening, a little more tired than usual. And it got increasing towards the end of the week, and I was trying to stay up and work on my master's project, and I just couldn't do it anymore. So Sunday, I took the whole day off of everything and just rested at home. And by Monday, I was feeling pretty good. So I decided I would start jogging again, which I hadn't done since fall, or rather not fall, but since the summer. All right, so here we go. Let me put this another way. Last year in August, I broke my foot, and then I hurt my shoulder, and so I was in physical therapy for a while. And in January, by January, I'd start working out again and doing cross training, but I hadn't done the running because my foot was still having some issues with balance and flexibility. So here I was on the 27th, and I was going to start jogging again, which was really exciting for me. And I wasn't going to, like go crazy. Just do a little jogging, do some walking, do a little jogging, do some walking, do a little jogging, some walking. And I felt a little winded after every jogging set. So I decided to cut the whole exercise short, and I only ended up doing like 20 minutes instead of the full out time I had planned on. And then in the evening, I took my temperature, and it was 100.4. Now, that's not a crazy high fever. And at the time, the symptoms for COVID-19 that the CDC had put out were a cough, shortness of breath, and a high fever. But I didn't want to take any chances. So I thought, I'll just call up my boss tomorrow and let her know I'm not coming in. Well, the next morning I woke up, I was hyperventilating, like not coughing, just hyperventilating. And I was super, super dizzy. And I thought maybe it was from the fast breathing, but it wasn't just like, ordinary dizziness where you're like, whoa, kind of dizzy. Ugh. No, it was like persistently dizzy. Like, I would have to lean against the wall and steady myself on objects because I was so extremely dizzy. I would fall over. I was concerned about hurting myself falling over. And I thought, is this the sickness? But I don't feel like I'm short of breath. I'm just breathing fast. I don't know. So I called up my doctor's office, and he wasn't in, but I went ahead and saw whoever was available. And he sent me into the ER, even though, I was clearly not in distress at the time. My heart rate was 60 beats per minute, which is completely normal for me. I just had the fast breathing and the dizziness, which was a little weird and annoying because I needed to work on school stuff. I told my sister, and she drove me over while I had a bandana over my mouth and was sitting in the back seat with the window rolled down, just in case. And I got to the ER and I told her to stay outside because I didn't want her to catch anything going in. And I walked into the lobby very, very slowly and got checked in. And while I was standing there, they told me that I could have a seat, and it was so bad. I was just, I didn't know how to get over so far over to that area where the seating was. And I guess somehow they figured it out because they brought a rolling chair over for me to sit down, and I carefully leaned on it and sat down while the nurse held it in place for me and then wheeled me over to a location away from everybody to wait because there was another patient in there. They were trying to get checked out before me. Well, I finally got in to see the ER doctor. He did bacterial panels and blood tests and an EKG and a chest x-ray, and everything came back normal. Well, I wasn't feeling normal. And I looked at him and I said, if you were to guess or speculate on what's going on, what do you think could cause this? And he sat there for a little while before he answered me. And he said, well, I think it's either pulmonary hypertension or COVID-19. And I said, why do you think it's COVID-19? And he said, well, with your shortness of breath. And I said, no. I'm not short of breath. I'm breathing just fine. But I didn't understand at the time that is shortness of breath. It's not feeling like you're out of breath. It's the length of that expansion. Well, learn something every day, right? And I said, well, how would I know which one it is? And he said, well, during the next week when you're at work. And I thought, oh my gosh, at work? I'm not going to work like this. That's crazy. There's no way. I can't work while I'm this dizzy. But like I said, he said, well, at work when you're lifting stuff up onto the shelves and whatnot, and you notice that you're having a hard time breathing or your heart's racing, then it's probably the pulmonary hypertension. And at the time, while I was laying there in that bed, I was just baffled by the idea. Because if I even tried to sit up a little, or move or talk, my breathing just became worse. Just worse automatically. But if I laid there super still and didn't move and kind of pushed myself onto my side, because lying on my back felt terrible. If I kind of leaned a little bit over on my side, I could almost breathe like normal. Anyhow, they checked me out and wheeled me out to my sister, who had come to pick me up, and sent me through one of the drive-through centers that was right there at the hospital over a door, and tested me with the nasopharyngeal swab up the nose, which hurts a little bit, makes your eyes water, and sent me home. And when I went home, I just stayed in my room, isolated, and I asked my sister to make sure everything was sterilized so that if I was contagious, hopefully nobody else would get sick, and isolated myself in my bedroom for who knows how long. And I had called my boss and told her I wasn't coming into work and I didn't know when I'd be back. And I tried to do my schoolwork, but it was really hard to focus with the dizziness and the breathing, and I got really tired fast, and it was hard to breathe, and it was hard to sleep with the breathing, that fast breath was distracting from a restful sleep. But I've spent years training myself to fall asleep because I have terrible insomnia. So I just did that thing where I kind of switched my mind off from stimulation and kind of went into that hypnotic state of flowing into sleep. And the next day when I woke up, I was extremely tired and achy and cold, and I just had chills. And I wrapped myself up and started to work on schoolwork, and my phone rang, and my heart, actually this wasn't quite then, I need to look at my thing because I'm just going to forget all sorts of stuff. Oh, I forgot the weekend before I had started my period, and I had stabbing gut pains, and my hypoglycemia was acting up like crazy. So the question, of course, is, were the stabbing gut pains menstrual cramps? And looking back, I'm certain they weren't. They were due to whatever was happening with me. Let me see. Okay, so on the day after the ER, I had a low fever. Or actually, it wasn't even really a fever. I got up to 100.2. That's not bad. And then, it was the day after when my phone rang, and my heart rate shot up to 132. And it stayed like that for about 5 minutes, but I was like, holy crap, what's going on? Oh my gosh, why is it so fast? And then it settled down to like normal again. So I didn't think much of it. And let's see, my fatigue became extreme. I started sleeping more than I was waking. The shortness of breath that was happening only with exertion and with talking became nonstop. it was just hyperventilation the whole time. And my dizziness that had been so extreme that first day, it settled down to where it was really bad, but I could walk just fine. I wasn't having problems where I was falling over or anything. And I had a mild cough, the mild cough I'd had ever since my allergies had started. But now I don't think that it was allergies. And the chills were terrible. And my throat started to get really sore, but that was only for about 3 days. And then I started to develop this chest discomfort and pressure where, once again, I couldn't lay back. I had to be on my side or on my stomach. But if I was laying on my back, it just felt like something was being squeezed that I needed for life. So there was no way I was going to sleep on my back or lay down flat. And I had mental confusion at this time. I don't know if it was due to the crazy breathing, but I think, I don't know, but some of this information I had to reconstruct after the fact, because I had meant to write down my symptoms every single day, and I forgot some days, and it was like one day started blurring into the next, and I had to look on my phone in order to figure out what day it was. I didn't really leave the basement at all. I didn't really leave my room except to use the toilet. My sister would bring me food, but on the 1st of May, or on the 30th of April, I started to lose my appetite. And eventually I just lost it completely. And finally I decided, well, I was just gross. I'd been a week, no shower, very little food, and I wanted to feel better, and often showering makes me feel better when I'm sick. So I made sure that there was nobody near the shower, and I grabbed some cleaner to spray it down after I used it, because I don't have a shower of my own in the basement, because the bathroom down there is currently under construction and has been for over a year. Anyhow, and I got in the shower, and the water was really warm, and when I looked down, my foot turned gray, and then the veins on it just kind of popped up a little and looked black. I mean, it looked like a horror movie, and I thought, what the heck is going on? Is that sepsis? Do I have a clot? I don't know. And the thing is that you might think, well, why would I think that? I can't feel a lot of parts of my foot. I've got neuropathy from the chemo. So I'm looking at my foot and seeing this happen, and it kind of freaked me out. And I was like, I should go in right now. And I just started to feel a little bit panicky. And I got out of the shower, got clothes on, and had my sister drive me over to the ER. By the time I got checked in, my blood pressure was high, my breathing was bad, my heart rate was bad. But not extreme. I just mean that they weren't normal. They were all high. And the ER doctor checked me out, and I talked to him about what had been going on. And I had gotten my PCR test back, and it was negative. So I thought, man, I don't know what's going on. And I was worried that maybe I had a blood clot, because I've had a blood clot before. And he checked me out, and my heart rate was so erratic. And I talked with him, and he thought that I was having a panic attack and I was hyperventilating. And I thought, well, clearly I am breathing too fast, but I've been doing that for well over a week, even when I sleep. So I don't know that the breathing's a panic attack. I do have anxiety, and seeing my foot change in that way had upset me. But I didn't think that this was just a panic attack, because I've had panic attacks before and they feel different. And I talked to him about how my foot had changed color, and right when he was looking at it, of course, it looked normal. And he talked to me about Renaud Syndrome. And I thought, well, yeah, but I've not really had Raynaud Syndrome. And then I thought, well, maybe I have, because back when I was going through chemo, I woke up once and my fingers to here were just white and I couldn't feel them. So some kind of circulation issue, but I'd only had it once when I went through chemo. So I was like, okay, but I don't remember it turning gray. It was just white. I don't know. I don't understand. And it was so confusing for me at the time. I was already dealing with mental confusion. And while I was in the ER, I got extremely cold and started to physically shake. And it just felt terrible. And I wanted to go home. So I was so tired of being there, and I felt like the doctors couldn't do anything for me, and I felt like they didn't believe me, and they didn't believe my judgment and my own assessment of the situation. And he couldn't find anything. And he checked me out for congestive heart failure with another x-ray and nothing. And I just wanted to go home. So I went home. 3 days later, I had a swelling in my abdomen and some pain here on the left side, down by my ribs, bottom ribs. And I remember that pain from before when I had lesions on my spleen, when I had cancer back in 2015. And I started to get throat constriction. It felt like somebody was inside, like some ghost or something, strangling me, and like I couldn't breathe, but air was going in and out and in and out, in and out and in and out, because I still had that shortness of breath. But I felt like I was drowning, or like I couldn't breathe. And I don't know if you've ever felt like you were drowning before, but when I was a teenager, I had somebody dunk me underwater, good friend, right? And hold me down until I started to swallow water, and just desperation, felt like I was not going to live. And I lashed out at him, and he finally let me up, and I just remember going to the side of the pool and spitting out water and trying to breathe, and finally feeling some relief and safety and anger at my friend for what he did. And it was that feeling all over again. And at that time, the phlegm started. So I started coughing up this foamy, watery, it almost looked like saliva. I don't really know what kind of secretion it was, but it was bugging me down in here. and I would just start coughing it up and coughing it up and coughing it up. And when I tried to sleep, I would wake up and have it in my throat, and I would be coughing and coughing it up, coughing it onto the floor, and it just felt horrible. And this continued for 3 days. On the second day, I wanted to die, and I looked around in my bed and looked for something to try to end the suffering. And when I finally found it, I reached out and grabbed it, and I threw it as far away from me as I could. I was suicidal for 13 years as a child, and it's the first time since I was 19 that I had felt that suicidal ideation, and it scared me, but living was so horrible. And by the third night, I had completely lost the ability to swallow anything. I had tried at one point to swallow, and it was like it got stuck here in my, what is it called, in my esophagus. And I could feel it wrestling for a little while before it spewed back out, kind of like vomit that never made it down very far. And I couldn't drink safely. And that third night, I knew I was gonna die. So I told my sister goodbye, and I cried. And then the next morning I woke up, and it wasn't as bad. And I didn't feel like somebody was trying to strangle me anymore. And the dizziness had gotten worse, but my throat wasn't constricting. I had lost 10 pounds in 3 days from, well, probably in those 3 days, from not being able to drink anything. And that feeling of not being able to breathe and drowning was gone. I still had that crazy shortness of breath. It felt like I was breathing without air, even though logically I knew there was air going in and coming out. And I started to have all sorts of weird skin symptoms and aches and pain. So I arranged it so that I could have my own shower. My family rearranged so that everybody was in one shower, and then I had another shower. So I went and got a shower, and it was one of the most horrible showers I've ever had. And my feet hurt a lot in the shower. Screaming pain, kind of like back when I had cancer and they hadn't diagnosed it yet. And right across the instep on both of my feet, it turned bright red. And it was extremely painful, and when I got out, my feet continued to hurt. And my body started to have this weird smell. And it started back, let me see. Panic attacks, yeah. I had panic attacks. Go figure. Okay, the strange rotting flesh smell started as the same day as my drowning feeling. So my sweat, my bed sheets, it wasn't like an ordinary body odor. If you've ever smelled rotting flesh, that's kind of what it smelled like. and my urine smelled that way, and it was really vile. And my hands got really, really pale, and the skin, it's kind of like when I had chemo and the skin on my face kind of looked like paper and started to hang weird on me, except for it was on the backs of both my hands. And like all of the tension in my skin was gone, and it just like, I could move it like this and it would all stay sloughed that way. And I thought, oh man, I'm so bad dehydrated. So I started drinking more water. My sister got me some Pedialyte, and I started mixing half Pedialyte and half water and trying to rehydrate myself. And I started to lose my sense of smell. So one day, this day when I went to get the shower, where my feet hurt and everything, I couldn't smell my shampoo anymore at all. And I decided to test it out, which if you've seen my other video, I tested my sense of smell on all sorts of things like peppermint oil, really strong smells, and it was mostly gone. I could still smell cumin though, and I can't explain that. And I could taste salt, sweet, bitter, that sort of thing on my tongue, but for some reason, most smells were completely blind, or I was completely nose blind too. And it was kind of nice because that strange rotten body odor, I couldn't smell it anymore. And I started to develop rashes. And my skin was tingling all over at the time, and I don't remember when the tingling started, and I didn't mark that down on my chart at all. But I felt tingling on my skin, and my face started to itch, especially around my mouth, and I started to develop a rash here on my chin. And that continued for a while. And then on the 15th of May, so 10 days after I went into the ER the second time, and let's see, that would be 17 days after my first ER trip, that day that I woke up hyperventilating and whatnot, I suddenly felt better. And I had had a low fever for several days, and it was gone. And my appetite, which had completely gone away, came back. And all of my symptoms significantly got better on that day. And so I contacted my doctor and told him what was going on. He had me go in for another PCR test, which came back negative again, but this time no surprise, because I was feeling better. Even if I had COVID-19, I was pretty confident that test would be negative. And everything started to seem to get better. The tachycardia with the heart racing, I don't think I talked about that a lot, but I had that one incident where it shot up to 132, and after that, every day when I woke up, I would measure it, and it would be 80, 100, 132. So I was waking up with a fast heart rate, and it would continue, and it would get worse throughout the day. And it started to get better. And once again, I started to get that shakiness, like I had hypoglycemia. And that went on for about 9 days after that. And then it was just like I was better. I was still getting diarrhea. No, I forgot to talk about that too. I got diarrhea like once every 3 days. That was just like explosive yellow diarrhea. It was horrible. But yeah, and my true allergies started to show up. And my sense of smell, let me see how this happened. So I had lost my sense of smell for 5 days, and then it started to come back, and except for some things didn't taste like themselves, like milk tasted completely like water. And then one day I sneezed out this foul tasting, rotten tasting, dark brown sneeze, and it was less like phlegm than it was like clotted blood, but not new blood, like blood that had been in there for a long time. So I wonder if I had some kind of sinus infection going on that had caused the me to lose my sense of smell. And I also wonder with that rotten smell if part of it had to do with the infection that was up there. But I'm not sure because that smell was in my sweat and in my urine, but like there were other smells previously that I had that it wasn't in, so I don't know. And after I sneezed out, like more of my sense of smell came back. And then I started to get rashes. Lots and lots of rashes. And one of those rashes was, I told you about how I had the red marks on my insteps. Both of my little toes also turned, they swole up and turned red. And so I had pernio-like rash on my pinky toes. Some people call them chilblains. I used to have a friend that had chilblains, and I have a coworker who gets them. And it seemed like I was, just back getting into recovery from this illness, and I was pretty convinced by that time that I had COVID-19. And then I went and saw the pulmonologist, who I had got an appointment with a month before when I first went into the ER, just in case I had pulmonary hypertension. He could check me out. So I talked with him about what was going on and asked him if he thought it was pulmonary hypertension or what else it could be. And he was pretty convinced it was some kind of viral illness. And he checked me for antibodies, and it came back negative. So he was completely convinced that it was not COVID-19. And I was very confused because during the whole illness, after I got the first negative PCR test, I thought I didn't know what was wrong and I couldn't figure it out and what was wrong with me and what was I sick with if it wasn't COVID-19. And then when I lost my sense of smell, I thought, oh man, this has got to be COVID-19. Maybe the PCR test was wrong. So I started right after I got super sick that first day in the ER, along with working on my grad stuff and trying to finish it up and trying to get my master's project presentation done and finish up school. After that, I started researching COVID-19 via the internet and looking at all the latest journals and finding science shows where they talked about it, because the news and the information out from the CDC clearly wasn't up to date. So I know that with research right now, they are running as fast as they can in terms of figuring out what things are going on and what to do about them. And sometimes they make mistakes, but I needed better information than what was available at public health websites. So I started looking at all of this, and I found out that the PCR tests aren't entirely reliable. They had an early study in China where they found out that CT scans were more accurate than PCR tests, but they're also more problematic with keeping the equipment clean and exposing patients to radiation and things like that. And then also found out that the antibody tests are highly dependent on when they're given, as are the PCR tests in their accuracy. And so now I'm in the state of not knowing whether or not I had COVID-19. I strongly suspect that I did, but I have no conclusive evidence that that's the case. My pulmonologist suggested it might have been RSV, although it really didn't sound to me like RSV when I went and looked up what does RSV look like in adult patients. I continue to have post-viral symptoms, but they're not like my earlier symptoms. I got a workup by the pulmonologist to make sure that I was safe to start exercising again. And I went and saw my cardiologist, who was wonderful. And she actually listened to me about my symptoms and how I lost my ability to swallow and the weird stuff, the skin symptoms and everything that I read off to her. And she was like, yeah, that does sound like COVID-19. But of course, there's no confirmation. And some of the doctors that I've been seeing have pretty much been gaslighting me as far as me talking about what has happened and the possibilities of those tests being inaccurate. And at this point, I'm not really curious that much about what it was because I'm facing recovery and those difficulties. I got a cardiology, echocardiogram, and my cardiologist also did a stress test to make sure, and a Holter monitor test to make sure that I would be safe starting exercising again. And they all gave me the green lights. But with my stress test, I only made it about 6 minutes. I have been badly deconditioned. My heart has been deconditioned by the illness that I have had, and my ejection fraction is a little low, like 49, but it's not bad. So my cardiologist is pretty confident that with exercise it will get back to where I was, where I used to be exercising every day of the week for about an hour and then walking my dogs and very active at my job. So looking back at this year, I think in January I probably had some kind of illness, but so mild. And in March, and so mild, and that allergic reaction, I'll never know. And I wonder if that incident that I had with the mask, whether I was actually hyperventilating, or if that was the day that I initially got exposed to whatever virus made me sick. Because I had that suffocating feeling, and I had it for hours after I stopped wearing the mask, and I was doing deep breathing exercises, and it continued until the next morning. So I wonder if it was some kind of immune reaction that I had after initial exposure. Not sure, but I think it's a good possibility. And those early symptoms of fatigue and maybe that tickling kind of irritation at the back of my throat that made me clear it at work. Maybe that was the virus as well. The stabbing gut pains, probably the virus. Also during this time, after that first ER trip, I developed burning tongue syndrome or burning mouth syndrome. Let me see. That was, it was the second ER trip where I developed that. And if you've ever had burning mouth syndrome, it's kind of vague. I think that might have been a secondary infection, but I'm not sure because I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know. It might have been a secondary infection, or it may have just been kind of another allergic reaction to go with the secondary immune response that I'd already clearly started to develop with the coughing and the secretions coming up from my lungs. I'm still dealing with my secondary immune response, so I still get rashes that come and go. You can tell my voice is kind of hoarse, and it's sore. And I went and visited an ears, nose, throat specialist, and I saw the physician's assistant doctor there, and he put me on Mucinex and a saline rinse for my all this area, and then Flonase and a magic rinse that has I looked it up, it has a medication for allergic reactions. It has a medication for an antifungal and an antibacterial. So it's just kind of a general get well thing. And I still got a little bit of it, and things are much better on it, but I'm still not cleared up. And my pulmonologist also put me on an albuterol inhaler, which it helps sometimes with my chest tightness. I don't have chest pain anymore, but chest tightness, it does help. But I don't know how long I'm going to be sick like this and how long it's going to take me to get better. With the shortness of breath, I've started to walk again, and that's about as good as I can do. Anything more and my heart rate goes crazy and I just feel horrible and want to stop. But I started out I'd walk out to the mailbox and then I have to rest, and then I'd walk into the house and then I'd have to take a nap. Yes, cutie. My little friend came to find me. And I'm now up to the point where I'm walking 5 miles a day in the morning, and most of the time 2 miles at night, and taking naps in the middle of the day. And it's not too bad. I'm getting better faster than I did from chemo, but it's still clearly going to take some time. I think maybe in 6 months I might be able to start exercising again. And I know some of you think that walking like that is exercise, but it's not for me usually. But I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get there. So I'm just hoping for the best. And in the links posted below, I'm going to post some of the sites where I've been getting my information from, so that if you are curious, you can always go check them out to find out more information. I try to make sure that they're all good research-based sites with reviews from people who are knowledgeable. Some of them are more geared towards children, and some of them are geared towards experts, and I don't always understand everything they say. But I know we're still in the pandemic, and maybe if the virus that I got isn't SARS-CoV-2, I might still be vulnerable to that. So please wear your masks and practice social distancing and be well, and hopefully we'll have a good and effective vaccine soon, and we can start to all recover, and economically recover, and career recover, and things will get back to normal. And I wish you all well, and if you are dealing with the illness, I really hope the best for you.